And you also remember in the run-up to the 2024 December elections, leading members of the NDC, including the current finance minister and the current agric minister, they all said if we were given the opportunity to come into office, the minimum they will offer the cocoa farmer would be 6,000 cedis per 64-kilo bag of cocoa. If you look at their manifesto, a lot of promises have also been made, including cocoa, the operationalization of the cocoa pension scheme, as well as healthcare for the cocoa farmer. When they were taking office, the producer price of cocoa, the farm gate price, was 3,100 Ghana cedis. And I remember the finance minister saying Nanadro was a cheat and that he was cheating cocoa farmers and wicked, and that he was cheating cocoa farmers big time. They increased the cocoa price from 3,100 to 3,225 and subsequently to 3,625. Yesterday, when the cabinet, emergency cabinet meeting was called, we were expecting that the president was going to give a directive that the finance minister should find money to pay cocoa farmers who have sold their produce to the license buying companies. This morning we were waiting for the press conference at 11 o'clock. It didn't happen. 1 o'clock, it didn't happen. It started somewhere around 2:30 thereabout. Only to hear that the producer price has been slashed by more than 1,000 Ghana cedis. 10 million. From 3,625 to 2,587. This has never, ever happened in the history of this country. Why are we treating cocoa farmers this way? Why? Cocoa farmer has never enjoyed the full benefit of the FOB. Never, ever. Sometimes we even pay them 40%. Cocoa farmer has sacrificed for this country. And in fact, if the cocoa farmers' farm gate price is going to be reduced by almost 30%, then everybody's pay in this country should also be slashed by that margin. Is the chief executive officer of Cocoa Board, his allowance and salary, is he going to be slashed by the same margin? I am sad. Today is a sad country for everybody. And I think the president should come again. Cocoa farmers deserve better, and they should not be treated like trash. I thank you very much for your attention. Nkrumah, Mobetia, President Kase offer emergency meeting. Then you know say emergency meeting now offer no. Edi asem papa beba. The other meeting na so Obekase finance minister. Kwa we sika na fa betua akuafoka. If is anya na nko na cocoa price akofom. Ye wura kofo abreso cocoa price akofom. Kofo pe kwan papa so edi tua akuafoka. Ye wura omampanyin kufo ado abreso international price akofom omampanyin pe kwan papa bi so edi tua akuafoka. Akuafo na ahwe Ghana saa free set tate kwahye di cocoa buy 1879. Ni efre na FOB. Price ade bi ekogye no international market no. Yemfa ni nyina ma akuafo da. Da bia yetua ne kese na 70%, ohemu chechemu aduoson. Eduru me bi kra timi tiba fom 40% pen ye de ma akuafo. And the international price akofom a afipe na omubu man ye o. Afipe na wati akuafo wo mo akatua wo de ma wo mo so 10 million. 10 million o. Nti akuafo wo mo nya de en. Akuafo na show man yisa ye ma ye scholarship ye de bi ya kwan ye de bi CBBA akuafo na show man yi nyina na no ukwohwe Bank of Ghana omo report ba ya report no nko ase afie nko ano 2025 nko ano omo nya $3.9 billion Would you find multiply current rate? In the Sassicano, a Quafosicano, or more the year. Now, a born co from our Cotia for or more a country de almost so 10 billion bag or the baby. And to Mujid say, or near Quafoid in the year. Yaba Twaba, Assembly and the anti free Yerrico Poco, Assembly and the anti free Yerra at forcing her. Senya me ya dum Mahama na mu o se wonni kokofo akopa asase wonni kokofo akopa asase enti asase ayen kopɛ na enu nie resetting no enu nie resetting enu nie so ahu na yɛnti ne panyinsɛm da sɛ yɛti koko akuafo ɛbo so koko akuafo na ahwɛ o man yi saa enti media mesrɛ si etiko kwakuafo boso dia ene ye Ghana ha ye ne ye adwuma nyina yenti obia koko na katua so ene okoko border chief executive monkohwe ne office ba bia na ne manager office wo ho na wode aye dan ne monkohwe ne fie asiasi a waye afi nko wato Land Cruisers 4 na ane de yente so enti na katua ne ye bete so ya bete so na me wura pa da me wura kese pa e ya da me ma me wuye enne de akwa e ya twa sa de no mu e ya twam nti resra mo nyina mo fama no ntumbi ne yan su ma akuafo na ya akuafo na hwe man yi sa bepem ne adan ne atutu o mo sa nti resra man panyin se wo mra biem na nane china ya o meka sa papa foforo enchira akuafo na sane a we pa so what so 10 billion de yampene anu kwa de yampene ti asra wo mapanyin se won sa mra biem ya da mase
So, ladies and gentlemen of the press, we were told that the Minister for Finance was coming to announce what they call a restructuring of the cocoa sector. We are very surprised that the minister rather used the opportunity to shortchange cocoa farmers. Before we left government, we introduced a turnaround strategy for cocoa board, and we worked on this with the IMF. This strategy was intended to comprehensively restructure cocoa board. What is happening today in the cocoa sector is not surprising to us because this government has failed to implement the cocoa board turnaround strategy. That is why cocoa board is facing these challenges. I heard that the minister is directing to move the cost of cocoa roads to the Ministry of Roads. This measure was in the strategy, the turnaround strategy that we handed over to them. It took them 1 year. They have not implemented it. Only because there is now crisis in the cocoa sector, the minister has rushed to announce this measure, which the minister was well informed about in the strategy for turning around cocoa board, which we handed over to them. They were also supposed to legislate a transparent pricing policy for cocoa. They have not done that. They were to remove some cost items which tend to reduce the producer price of cocoa, which we thought were unnecessary and in some cases duplicative. They have not done that. They were supposed to get cocoa board to move away from non-core businesses and also to improve on efficiency and reduce cost, particularly in procurement. They have not done that. And so as far as we are concerned, this NDC government did not need to announce any new strategy for restructuring cocoa board. And as we expected, they could not announce any comprehensive strategy for restructuring cocoa board. If they implemented the strategy that we handed over to them, cocoa board will not be in this mess. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am even surprised that the IMF is sleeping over this. Because we developed this strategy in consultation with the IMF as a requirement, one of the requirements for implementing the IMF program. I'm really surprised that the IMF has gone to sleep on this. And this government is recklessly managing the cocoa sector, which has brought us to this unprecedented crisis in the sector. Given the scale of the crisis in the sector now, a sector which is one of the most important pillars of our economy, one expected the government to give Cocoa Board a bailout, as we did during the MPP time, rather than reducing the producer price for cocoa. A bailout would have been necessary, particularly at the time we are told that the economy is strong and resilient. They said they are better managers of the economy. An economy that is better managed cannot pay cocoa farmers. An economy that is better managed reduces the producer price of cocoa. And so Ghanaians can see the deception and the narrative that the NDC government brought to them about our government, the previous MPP government, as having badly managed the economy. Ghanaians can now see who is better managing the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the cocoa of Ghana, Ghana's cocoa, is now considered more expensive. And this has been confirmed by the CEO of Cocoa Board, my friend Randy Abbey. He has confirmed in an interview that Ghana's cocoa is now more expensive, and therefore consumers are turning away from Ghana's cocoa, as a result of which demand for Ghana's cocoa has fallen. The reasons for this are not far-fetched. We warned this government about the reckless overvaluation of our currency. We warned them several times that these dollars they are pumping and pumping into the economy, that reckless intervention. Last year alone, they intervened to the tune of 10 billion United States dollars. The trend has continued. That reckless overvaluation of our currency will affect our economy. Because those of you who understand economics know that when you overvalue your currency, it adversely affects the export competitiveness of your country. And so, is it surprising that the competitiveness of cocoa on the global market is reducing? Is it surprising? Because this government thought that managing an economy is by pumping dollars to shore up the city. And now this is the effect. Overvaluation, when your currency appreciates unreasonably, as we are seeing, your exports suffer. Rather, what you see is promotion of imports. And so more imports are coming into our economy. Our exports are losing value on the international stage. And increasing imports will only come to reduce the domestic production base, because it will affect domestic production of goods and services. This is why you go to the market today, imported rice is now more expensive than locally produced rice. You go to the market, imported maize is now more expensive than locally produced maize. This government is cheaper. It's now cheaper than locally produced maize. This government should know, because they have economists amongst them. They should know that anytime you are implementing a policy, there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs. And therefore, by overvaluing the currency as a policy, they should know that other sectors will suffer. So what a responsible government has to do is to achieve what we call policy equilibrium. Policy equilibrium, so that all sectors are protected. I'll give you an example. They tell us that inflation is now 3.8%. Good, isn't it? It's good. But if you look at what we call purchasing power parity approach in economics, it tells you that when your inflation is 3.8%, your currency should depreciate by at least 3.8% in order to protect exports. What do we see? They are going around bragging about appreciation. That is poor economics. When your inflation is 3.8%, your currency should depreciate by more than the inflation rate in order for you to protect your exports. Because your exports is your economy. Your exports create jobs. And so in this era of 24-hour economy, the least this government could do was to protect the exports of our country and thereby protect jobs in this country. Rather, at the time they passed the authority for 24-hour, they are also reducing the domestic production base and thereby reducing opportunities for employment in the country. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my view is that the figures they are branding about, inflation is this, the exchange rate is this, is killing, behind these inflation figures, is killing our economy. And the cocoa sector has just exposed them. The cocoa sector has just exposed them. Maize, I'm just coming from my constituency. They have piles of bags of maize that they are not able to sell. Because people will go to buy the imported maize at the expense of locally produced maize. And so the efforts our farmers are putting into this work to save our economy, to save our country, to feed our country, this government, the NDC government, is recklessly undermining all these efforts. And it won't be long before Ghanaians will see the reality of this government. So I thank you very much.
Colleagues, good afternoon. Just to add a few more comments and then we will wrap up. First of all, we are of the view that the Republic of Ghana did not need an emergency cabinet meeting just for the purposes of discussing how to pay cocoa farmers. When you have to call an emergency cabinet meeting just for the purposes of discussing how to pay cocoa farmers, then there's a real crisis in government, which you are covering up with some numbers and some narratives. In the previous MPP era, payment of cocoa farmers was a matter of regular procedure. Now emergency cabinet meetings are being called just to discuss how to pay cocoa farmers. But to the more substantive argument, first of all, the announcement that Cocoa Board should immediately pay them, that announcement is of no effect. Because that announcement presumes that Cocoa Board has the money and was deliberately refusing to pay the farmers. Is that what was going on? No. Because if this whole press conference is about the fact that the government went to a cabinet meeting and has instructed Cocoa Board to pay the farmers, seriously, it raises more questions than answers. Because unless you are saying that the money was available and Cocoa Board was refusing, then what the government should be doing specifically is instructing that emergency liquidity assistance should be released to Cocoa Board to pay the farmers, not an announcement that they should be paid. But we don't want you to forget the two main causes of the crisis we're having in the cocoa sector now. Two main causes. Number one is that the new managers of the cocoa sector have reset the trading program of Cocoa Board. We used to sell about 70% on forward sales and 30% on spot. They argued that that was an incompetent approach and decided to change it. And now they are selling about 70% on spot. That is why today, as prices have dipped, they are struggling and are saying that the price they had announced ends up being higher than the current prices on the market. That's number one, because of their own decision to reset the trading model. Number two is the artificial injection of forex into the Ghanaian economy, which has overvalued our cedi, as Dr. Amin rightly explained, and is therefore making our exports relatively more expensive. Remember, we've been raising this matter for a while now. And when they say, oh, dollar has come down, clap for us. Now we are beginning to see the effect, at least in the first area, in the cocoa sector. This action to announce a 28% reduction in the price amounts to a haircut of about 28% on close to 1 million Ghanaian cocoa farmers. You may not recognize it. 28%, 28.6% reduction, this 28.6% haircut is going to affect about 1 million cocoa farmers. And if you add to it the number of people who assist them on the farms and their dependents, my gosh, we're getting to maybe 3-4 million people are going to be affected by this haircut that the NDC government has announced. You see, when you manage an economy with artificial adjustments, the real effect will be realized on cocoa farms, in transport fares, in electricity bills, in school fees. Now you are beginning to see the real impact of some of the things that we are talking about. And it is now clear that this NDC government cannot be trusted. When the MPP moved cocoa prices from 475 Ghana cedis per bag to 3,100, they told the people of Ghana that we were robbing them and that they should actually be getting 6,000 to 7,000 Ghana cedis. And just about 1 year in their tenure, they could not even pay the 6,000. They now said 3,650. No.
And 25.
3,625. And even that one, they can't pay. They have to call an emergency cabinet meeting to announce that Cocoa Board should pay. And then after that, they announced a 28% haircut on the poor Ghanaian farmer. One of the impacts, and that's what I want to conclude with. Already when you go into the cocoa growing areas, I was in my areas just a few days ago. A lot of young people are already not going into cocoa because they say the older folk who went into it, they don't see a transformation in their lives. It's left with the old, elderly, poor on the farms. When you do this, what is going to happen in subsequent years is that even those ones will not be going into the cocoa production. If they won't sell their cocoa farms to Galamsey operators, God knows what they will do. They will abandon their farms. Now, what it means also is that the productivity, the growth, the jobs, and the incomes that come from the cocoa sector, the foreign exchange that comes from the cocoa sector in subsequent years is all going to dwindle. And so we in the minority have a number of requests to government. All of this has come about because of the reset that Cocoa Board did. And that is why, respectfully, we ask the president to relieve the Cocoa Board CEO of his responsibilities at this point in time. Number two, we are asking the government that in previous times when cocoa prices fell and the government absorbed the shock and protected the cocoa farmer, the NDC government should absorb the cost of what they have done and protect the cocoa farmer and restore at least the 3,625 that they promised. This 2,800 or so that they are promising is totally unacceptable. Already we are receiving messages from cocoa farmers who say that if this is what is going to happen, they are going to demonstrate in a number of these. And if they do, we in this caucus, we will join them on the streets to do this demonstration. We thank you for the time and the opportunity that you gave us. Okay. Na ehun hia sa ban be frɛ cabinet meeting, emergency cabinet meeting say yekodwindwin kwan ya be fa so atua koko akuafo eka. Edu emra e wo sa wo frɛ cabinet meeting say wo kodwindwin kwan ya betua koko akuafo ka. Na kyerɛ say asɛm wo hɔ e na wo kata so. Asɛm kɛse wo hɔ na wo kata so. Na sa announcement we o man say Cocoa Board enkotua akuafo no. Eni nyina so obi esan say e kamia say ne sika no wo hɔ deda. Ena Cocoa Board eboa pase omuntua na nya sa de away announcement say omunkotua sen de wo sa ban ne ye ne say o chef finance minister na we na okasa ne say prekope onkope sika de friend emergency liquidity assistance emma Cocoa Board na Cocoa Board mfintua sa nya sa na abeka say omunkotua omka de na ne che say ne sika no wo ho na bro ne trimodinti na wonye den untua om na eden na akofa we aba ye mpese mo re befi ne ma mienu akofa we aba ba ko ne say aban we buy no masakra o masesa kwan e fa so ton ye koko first na ye de ani hwe daache ebo future prices and as a forward trading na ya ton o hanchichemu edioson 70% on buy no mo se yen nim ye nti o masesa no o mapam mpanifo ni bi ye de o mo nkofo abehim ena na o masesa no se o mo beye